The party's over.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to a new edition of the PressProsMagazine.com Monday Huddle. I'm Bruce Hooley. That smiling face you see beside me is Sonny Fulks, and hopefully we're streaming live on PressProsMagazine.com. That would be great if that actually works, which we'll see if it does, and if it doesn't, we'll have it figured out by next week. But you can always watch us on our Facebook page or on our Twitter/Periscope page. It is a pleasure to have you with us tonight. We appreciate it. We'll be joined very shortly by Roger Kraft, the new commissioner of the new Three Rivers Conference. Somebody say, wait a minute, there used to be a TRC. Yes, and it's coming back, kind of, sort of, with some of the old members and some new members. We'll talk with Roger about that in a second. Sonny will talk later on after we finish with Roger about the big story of the day from the OHSAA, but you were at the press conference at UD Arena. Boys and girls state basketball tournaments will stay in the Gem City for 3 more years.
Through 2024.
Mm-hmm.
And the mood there today was one of great excitement / relief because from the OHSAA standpoint, you know, they're happy that it's, I think, the best facility in the state of Ohio as far as a college basketball venue. The atmosphere is great. He made the point over and over and over today. I know people in Southwest Ohio love basketball, support basketball, are crazy for basketball. All those things were thrown around today, those words. And he said, you know, we saw firsthand here, even in the COVID situation, the tournament that we had 6 weeks ago, the excitement, the enthusiasm, the support, even from people who did not have their school wasn't in the tournament itself. Mm-hmm. There were people who showed up here from the various conferences represented because they wanted to see how the conference fared, you know, in the tournament. So he said, I know there's going to be great support here. We feel like this 3-year deal, he didn't say it was permanent. They're going to reopen this at some point. But and he made the point, and you can read it on Press Pros right now, the story. We will listen to anybody.
Sure.
It doesn't mean we're going to agree. Doesn't mean we'll say yes, because he said there are people who've reached out to us and said, hey, we'd like to have it in Cleveland, or we'd like to have it in, no one said they'd like to have it in Columbus, because I asked that, someone else asked it, does this mean that Columbus is not going to be the site of the state tournament again? And he didn't say never say. He never. It's one of those never say never answers.
Right.
But it was very obvious they were glad to be in Dayton.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's the best venue in Ohio. It's the best kind of sort of centrally located venue. The Cintas Center, the Shoemaker Center, and Cincinnati are good venues. Ohio State has a lousy venue that they play basketball in, Value City Arena, and obviously St. John Arena is a great old barn of a building. Nationwide Arena is a great building, but for this number of fans that they'll draw, I think UD is perfect, and I think it's a great decision. I think UD earned it. They were on a test basis last year. They came up big on short notice, and it's easy for us to get to, so I kind of like it for that reason. And we will talk more about that, but I don't want to keep our guest waiting any longer than we already have. He is Roger Kraft. He is the commissioner of the Three Rivers Conference. And Roger, when I was in Troy many years ago, the Three Rivers Conference existed. It ceased to exist for a while, and now it's back. Why don't you tell us how you became the commissioner and what excites you about the coming season?
Well, excuse me, my voice is a little bad, but I told Sonny this afternoon I might sound like Kermit the Frog, but we got tilt
your screen up a little bit there, Roger. I got half your head. There you go.
All right.
There we go. Perfect. That's much better.
Now you're cooking.
Half my face might be better, so I don't know. But anyway, we got 8 schools. We got 5 of them right here in Miami County. And you throw in Lehman just up there in Shelby County, and you go just a little bit south of Miami County. You got Northridge, and then you got Riverside from Logan County. So we got 8 schools that are really excited. It's very comparable schools. How I became the commissioner, there's 8 outstanding ADs that approached me, and Scott Donaldson kind of led the charge. And when I looked and saw those 8 ADs and saw the people that were sitting in those chairs, there was a lot of experience, a lot of great people. and they had a great cause, and I wanted to be part of it. So I was tickled when they asked me.
I characterize you, and I've said this to you before, as the iron-fisted new commissioner of the Three Rivers Conference. Will you come in, Roger Kraft, like Pete Rozelle?
I don't think so. I think the eight guys that I get to work with has been a pleasure, and I'm actually working for them. So I don't think I need to beat Pete Rozelle. No, I'll just be Roger Kraft and be happy to be part of the TRC.
You know, one of the things that every new conference enters into, one of the biggest, deepest concerns when they when they get off the ground and start running is staying power. Can we get through the growing pains, the infant stages? Are the 8 people we're going to start with the same 8 people are going to be here in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? Because continuity is so important in everything, in education and coaching, and certainly in something like a conference affiliation. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I think there's challenges out there all around. If you haven't had a challenge with your numbers, or as far as kids participating in sports, you're going to have one. So, but with the 8 schools that we have, like we said, we got a pretty good nucleus right here. I think the farthest trip in the geographically is 45 miles, and that would be from Northridge to Riverside. Everything else, the average is under 20-mile trips, which you're talking about junior high to varsity. That's outstanding for parents and for kids, and having that just 5 outstanding schools right here in Miami County, and then you throw Lehman, and you got Northridge right there at the southern end, and then you got Riverside, who's very, very strong and a good fit for what we're doing. So yeah, that stability is very important, and I think we'll have that.
And you certainly have all the demographics covered.
Yeah, absolutely, we do that, and that's the big thing right now with I think playing double round in every sport. Obviously, you don't do it in football, but when you take it volleyball, and you take basketball and baseball and softball, and you do it from junior high all the way through the varsity sports, you build some rivalries, and I'm so darn excited for next fall. I can't hardly stand it.
Roger, did you have an opportunity? Did you guys toy with a 10-team league or a 12-team league? Did you have other teams that wanted in it? I mean, as I look at your league, I'm originally from West Central Ohio, and Riverside was in the league that I played in when I was in high school. West Liberty Salem is my alma mater. So Riverside seems to me to be kind of an odd fit here. Can you talk a little bit about why 8 teams and how Riverside fit in the picture?
Well, Riverside and Lehman came to us from the NWCC, and they both kind of came as a pair. And I don't think they hesitated when they were asked to come. The good thing about me being the commissioner is a lot of the groundwork was done before they ever asked me to be the commissioner. It just everything kind of fell into place. Like I kept telling Scott and the people that were talking to me, was that this is too good to be true. This can't be happening. And it was December when we first talked, and by March we were doing them. I became the commissioner like February, and by March the 1st we did a memorandum of understanding with Riverside not hesitating. Lehman didn't hesitate. Northridge jumped right out of the SWBL, and of course Milton came with. They came as a pair. And of course, Covington, Miami East, and Bethel came from the old Cross County Conference, and it just all kind of fell like almost too good to be true. Troy Christian was obviously right there. I think their average trips were 15 miles. They were an obvious yes. So,
one of the questions that and going back to my last question for you about continuity and the girl that you take. Is that going to be the girl you dance with, and for how long? The outlier to this is how many other schools could you accommodate in this conference affiliation? Because it's no secret, this. That's the buzzword in every conversation is what's going to happen with schools like Fort Laramie and Anna if they want to play football in Laramie, because it's awfully hard to be an independent and play football. You know that. You've been an athletic director and administrator for a long, long time. How many other schools, and is there a willingness to expand the conference and grow?
We would always I think I heard the term "never say never." You know, we'd always entertain and look. There's, you know, when you take a school like Anna, for instance, they got the best of both worlds right now because they got the tradition of the Shelby County League, and then they go and then they're in their football. They're playing the very best conference in the state, in my mind, in most every sport is the MAC. So, you know, Fort Laramie's the one that was kind of torn. They were obviously invited to our conference, the TRC I'm speaking about, but they chose to stay with, and no doubt they were going to stay in the Shelby County League for all sports. And we were looking for all ends. We weren't looking for somebody to come just for this sport or just for that sport. We didn't want to start piecing it together. But, you know, down the road, who knows what Fort Laramie will choose to do. But you know, the tradition of the Shelby County League is right there with the MAC. It'd be very hard for either one of those schools to leave what they got there, because that they're solid.
Roger, the number one thing on everybody's mind is football. You know, when you start a league affiliation, and I know it's look, you and I both live in Covington. In fact, we live within a mile of each other. So we know what football means in Covington. We know what football has meant over the years in West Milton. But the real important thing that people overlook are the other sports and how important they were to these 8 teams getting together. Now you have JV, you have junior high, you have competition with these other sports, which you didn't have the variety of in the old Cross County Conference. Am I right?
Oh, absolutely. It's the from top to bottom of the sports. Just say wrestling. You know, you say Troy Christian, you say Covington, you say Milton, you say Miami East. You're right down the list, and you go, wow, what kind of a conference matches are we going to have? You know, you start that in junior high, and all of a sudden it's 6 years down the road. It doesn't matter whether it's volleyball or it doesn't matter whether it's cross country. There's going to be some outstanding rivalries, and there's going to be some. Basically, every school's going to have to raise the bar, in my opinion.
Well, Roger, I know Coach Nolan at Troy Christian's happy to get in a league. Scheduling's really hard when you're an independent, and he's very happy to be in it. And they're a great program. I mean, I think you've got a great mix. You've got a couple private schools, you've got some public schools, a lot of different counties. I think you have some existing rivalries already. That's a nice thing. You don't have to worry about building those. It's odd that you have a league that already has some history between it, that the schools know each other so well.
Absolutely. You go back to you were talking about the TRC before, you know, Miami East, Milton, Covington, Bethel, not Bethel, but we were all in the Southwestern Rivers, SRCs, the TRCs. So there is some natural rivalry. When Versailles went to the MAC, that was, you know, they were the first one to kind of jump out of the SRC, and that's when Covington was in there with them. So there are, like you said, there are natural rivalries, and they're going to build now that we can play double rounds in junior high, and Steve Nolan kind of guys that are been around, and when they get on a bus and they go 12 miles instead of driving across the state or going to another state or going, you know, to find a game on a Friday night, he's going to think he died and went to heaven when he gets on the bus and he's home by 10 o'clock, you know.
Well, plus the fact that in a cross-county conference, and you coached basketball at Covington for 15 years, so you know this, the cross-county conference was a very strong basketball league, top to bottom. Not so much in football was the big one or two, Covington and Miami East, and then everybody else fought for whatever was left over. Not so in this league, because a very strong basketball across this league, and as well as great football traditions at Lehman and Troy Christian and at Covington and Milton and certainly Miami East. And Riverside last year.
Friday nights are going to be exciting. I can tell you that in the fall, because, you know, like I said before, every school is going to have to raise the bar. Every school is going to have to get better, and that's what coaches want. I mean, if you're in coaching, you aren't telling your kids you got to get better. You're doing the wrong. You're not doing them any justice at all.
Roger Kraft is our guest. He's the commissioner of the Three Rivers Conference. It'll start play this fall. You know, you mentioned the MAC, and the MAC's great tradition. It has happened before that the MAC has had 3 state champions in one season. Let's talk about basketball and football. And I know you're probably predicated on enrollment for next year, but how many different divisions do you have right now among your membership represented, say, in football and basketball?
Right now, it would be for basketball, it'd be mainly Division 3 and 4. For football, we'd be 5, 6, and 7. So, you know, it's we'll all be playing the same night. Well, I looked there, I think it was earlier when I or a couple of weeks ago. I think divisions 1, 2, and 3, 4, I believe, all play on Fridays. And I kind of was looking ahead and seeing that we'll be 5, 6, and 7, so we'd be playing on Saturday nights with I heard you guys talking about it earlier, going from 8 to 16, and that basically doubles and goes from, like, I believe it's some number like 224 to 448 schools now eligible for the playoffs, which if I'm sitting in the OHSAA's position and I'm the treasurer, by God, that's a great move, because, with the pandemic and everything that's happened, and they're financially, and kids love playing in the playoffs. Football is a hot ticket. When this pandemic's over and people are going to start going to games, I think they've missed it so much. Like myself, I went to a couple games just to help, an AD out, and when they're in a pinch. But I didn't see many games. And that was a first for me. I think the OHSAA did the right thing by doubling it. Even though I'm an old traditionalist, I like the 8. I think they did the right thing for themselves and for schools right now to go to 16.
Well,
I think it was a good move.
I want you to put your AD shoes on for a while, because I'm going to ask you this question. If they don't, and they tell you, this, the OHSAA, we don't have money to pay for transportation anymore. We don't have money to pay for schools to staff these extra games. And somebody wrote in on one of our Reader Speaks column today that we posted tonight. I'm trying to understand, if they can't afford the busing, I can't afford the staffing, how is more games for more schools good for anybody?
Yeah, the $8 and $9 tickets they'll sell again, Sonny. I'm a firm believer that people are going to come back stronger and bigger and better, and get back out to those playoff games. Just like I'm tickled that our Three Rivers Conference now, with 5 schools being right here in Miami County, I think we're going to sell more tickets than we've ever sold before, just because people have missed what football on Friday nights was. And obviously I'm an old basketball coach, and I miss football in the fall. I miss going to boys and girls basketball games and wrestling matches, and although I can't. I'd pay whatever they want at the door at this point. And I really think the OHSAA is just trying to save themselves and get back to where they've never had to charge dues to schools for as long as I've been an AD. I was an AD for 25 years plus, working a couple of years as a commissioner now. And I know they don't want to get back to the place where they're charging schools dues, and whether they can reimburse you for busing and all that. That's a drop in the hat compared to selling $8 and $9, $10 tickets for playoff games.
I want to ask you one more thing, though, relative to the question I just asked. You're anxious to go back at any price. Well, do you think the rank and file person out there is going to pay $9 or $12 for a ticket to watch a 16 play a 1 in a 73-0 football game?
I think when you get teams into the playoffs, Sonny, it doesn't matter whether you're 16 and whether it's a 16 versus the 1 or 2 versus 15. I think once you can get your butt back in those bleachers and watch playoff football, this is Ohio. I think tickets will sell no matter what. So yeah, we kind of said the same thing when it was 1 versus 8. Of course, I remember when I was an AD a couple of times, Covington was 1 and Marion Local was 8. And guess who won the state that year? So you never say never. And when it's Friday night and it's November, the first Friday in November, people in Ohio like to go to football, and that's just part of it. Friday night football in Ohio will sell, in my opinion.
Hey, Roger, as we wrap up here, for those fans who have young people in your conference, have you guys discussed, or are you guys open to having an all sports pass that can help families of multiple people buy their tickets up front and have a season pass that would give them a little bit of a break on what it would be if they had kids who played and had to go to every game and get a family of 4 or 5 in every night?
But most of your local school districts have got a family pass in this day and age, so that we leave that up to our locals. So, like, for instance, if you're a family in Milton and you want to go to the Milton games, you obviously see what they have available. And I know Covington's got a family pass and those kind of things. So yeah, I'd say most schools in this day and age have got something like you're referring to.
I got one final question for you before you get off here, and I know your voice doesn't feel good and sound good, and I don't want to torture you, but I have to ask the question: have you rehearsed your signature so that it looks really nice and fluid, like Pete Rozell's did on the Wilson when he was committed? And will Roger Kraft's name be on the new Wilson footballs for the Three Rivers Conference?
I don't think that's going to happen. But I'm tickled to be able to go to watch Friday Night Football anywhere in the TRC, and I'll be around. Hopefully, I'll be seeing you out there somewhere along the line. Maybe since we live so close, we can ride together somewhat. So,
well, listen to this. I promise you, we have already made arrangements to have staffing at TRC games, photographers. And,
that's great. We sure appreciate that, Sonny. That'd be greatly appreciated, and I don't think you'll be disappointed in what you're going to see. It's going to be some great things happening in our conference.
We couldn't do that for the Old Cross County Conference, but we have already made arrangements as we've grown and expanded, to do that for the TRC. And don't sell yourself short. I think Roger Kraft's name should be on the damn football.
Okay. Well, thanks, Sonny. I appreciate that.
All right.
Thanks so much, Roger. We appreciate you joining us.
I sure appreciate you having us on. Thanks a lot.
You bet. You bet. Well, I mean, maybe we could just get some NFL footballs and, white out Goodell and put Kraft on there.
And no kidding. He lives right across the hayfield from me. And he is, I always said he was one of the most underappreciated high school basketball coaches in Southwest Ohio. He did a fabulous job for all those years at Covington and came after Steve Fisher and after Bob Hulsman, of course, when he was there for 238 wins. So a great guy, great administrator. There's no question about his passion for sports and for kids and opportunity and things like that. So we wish them the best in the Three Rivers Conference, and they did pick the right guy when they got Roger Kraft.
That's excellent. Yeah, I can't wait to see some of their games, and I am excited to see how they do in the postseason, which is where you make your reputation. Obviously, that's happened with the MAC and the Shelby County League for years and years. All right, a little bit more on the basketball tournaments going to UD. I don't know if you have anything left on that, but I like the move. I think it's good, for the teams, obviously, in our coverage area. It's convenient to Columbus, maybe an hour and a half away. It's obviously convenient to the teams in Miami County, Shelby County, Auglaize County, Darke County. So I think it's a great decision. And
I think one of the things that was talked about today, and I raised this question during the press conference, is how do you make the state tournament an event again? You and I've had this conversation many times. How do you make that something compelling enough where people say, I think I'm going to that over a movie, over camping, over whatever it is, because people have so many choices now. And I hear this all the time. And, ask the commissioner, ask the marketing director if they have one, what about a little consideration about how to make this something that people want to come back to? And I asked it today, and they say, yeah, it is on the head of our list of things to do. We've got a person working on that as to how to market it, how to profile it. And I know the Visitors Bureau in Dayton is going to be very active because the lady who's the head of that was there today, and she spoke, and she said it's on our bucket list or to-do list of things as to how to better market this and pack people into UD Arena for the state tournament.
Some of it can be done with those kinds of efforts. Some of it, I think, is out of the control of the OHSAA or the Visitors Bureau. If you have a LeBron James, if you have a John Diebler, you have a draw that people want to come and see. But some of that now is, I think, compromised by the fact that we have so many sites like Press Pros and 270 Hoops, and we have ESPN televising high school games. The players of bygone eras who were the big draws at state tournaments, whether it was a Gary Grant from a Lyndon McKinley or a Clark Kellogg from Cleveland St. Joe, or even a LeBron James as recently as that, I think there was an element of mystery to those guys, Sonny, and people wanted to go see those guys play because they hadn't seen them play. Now you can see them play on Instagram. You can see them play on YouTube. You can watch all their highlight tapes because of all these summer events and things like that. So it's a little bit too much information that's out there, that intrigue that made you want to go to the state tournament to see that guy play. I don't know that that can be recaptured like it used to be.
Well, let me tell you this. I'm an old retailer. And, I have both sold the merchandise and had to buy the marketing necessary to sell the merchandise. So I have experience from both sides of this issue. And what I will tell you is that when I was in electronics, in the photo retail industry, yes, there were 10% of the people in the market out there that knew everything about every new gadget that came out. from the Consumer Electronics Show. Those people knew everything before it hit the ground. It's the other 80 or 90%. And the same thing, I believe, still exists for basketball and football. I knew, for instance, now who's going to know more about athletes around the area and around the state, high-profile athletes than you or me? And I'm going to admit to you, I had never heard of that point guard from Worthington Christian.
DJ Moore. Yeah.
DJ Moore swept me off my feet when I watched him play.
Yeah.
When he hit that shot against that team from Cincinnati in the state semifinal game, I thought, wow. Nobody else knew about DJ Moore. A lot of people, not nobody, but a lot of people didn't know about DJ Moore. A lot of people didn't know about Tassos Cook.
Right.
And that's what I'm talking about. How do you get that out there from the first week of basketball season through the state tournament? Follow these guys. Here's what they're doing. Put that information out there if you're the OHSAA in terms of just it's their inventory. We talked about that a little bit last week. Get that information out there and let people know this is tomorrow's star playing today at Westerville Central or Worthington Christian.
Well, that's our inventory now as well, because we are expanding into Central Ohio, not at the expense of Western Ohio. And, if we get a transcendent star in another portion of the state, we're not averse to writing about that young man either. So that's what we look forward to with the advent of the football season and with the advent of the high school basketball season. So
let me share this with you. I know you saw the article that Steve Blackledge wrote about Jace Middleton. Okay? This weekend or last week, just a feature on Jace Middleton, who is an Ohio State commit out of Olentangy High School. That story alone got 100,000 readers across Ohio. It was the #1 read story up to this last weekend for the month of April on Press Pros from Olentangy. Now, that number of people, 100,000 people, that gets your name out there pretty quick. Well, the OHSAA can do the same thing with a heck of a lot more athletes and all the different sports they represent.
Jace Middleton's grandfather, Terry Middleton, is still working high school basketball games.
And doing a pretty good job.
Doing a doggone good job. Yes, he is.
Not a hair out of place.
No, Terry Middleton was a high school teacher when I graduated from high school. So at West Liberty Salem High School. So Terry, shout out to Terry and his son Matt and Matt's son Jace. And a shout out to Greg Beals, who's recruited Jace Middleton to follow his dad to Columbus. And you are Mr. Ohio State baseball, Sonny Fulks. And tell us about the Buckeyes weekend series. Is this the weekend that they're headed to Minnesota?
They look like gangbusters, 2 out of 3 against Purdue. Now, I don't know how you score 15 runs on Sunday and get beat 16-15. And, everybody said, well, the wind was blowing out. I don't care if the wind's blowing out or not. You got to find a way. You got to keep the ball in the park. If you score 15 runs, it's, I don't know how you lose. Now, I'm
to the Cubs on Sunday, Sonny.
I know. It can happen, and it's happened to me. But, boy, if you score 15, you got to find a way to win 15-14, not get beat by 1. So this is the weekend they go to Minnesota. Minnesota's having the worst season in the history. I said the history of Minnesota baseball under John Anderson and before him under Dick Siebert. The last time I looked, they were like 4-17 on the year. Wow. That just doesn't happen. That's where Dave Winfield and Paul Molitor went to school when I played against those guys. So they've got to go up there this weekend. We're not making that trip, but we will cover that and have the coverage of the games here on Press Pros for people interested in reading about them. But they've got to go up there and sweep that. Then they got to come back the following week with Michigan State, win that series, sweep it if you can. But, their season's in their hands. I think they're 16-13 right now or 17-14 right now. And they've got to win, baby, just like Al Davis.
Yeah, they're probably dead in the water, I would say.
Well, you don't know. You really don't know, because this whole business about RPI. Now, I'm not a brain surgeon, so I don't understand everything about RPI. But I do know that the rest of the country are playing by different rules than what Ohio State is. Now, the fact that they've got wins against Michigan and they got wins against Indiana and a good Illinois team, even though Illinois, I think, is beneath them in the standings right now, I don't know how much that's going to count when you compare them to some team from the Sun Belt or some team from, make one up, I don't know, the ACC maybe, that has played non-conference competition that isn't very good. I don't know how that's going to shake out in the end. I've been surprised forever about how teams get in and who gets in the NCAA tournament.
Winston has a question on Facebook. He says, "Hi, Bruce. Haven't been on for a while." I think he's referring to my radio show, which I used to live stream and have not for a while, or my podcast. He says, "Hope you're doing well, my friend." I am, Winston. Thank you. Like to hear your opinion of the Browns draft. I believe they had a great draft, and I'm a big Tommy Togiai fan. Well, Tommy Togiai was a good pickup for the Browns in the 4th round. He's a run stuffer. They need one. Otherwise, Greg Newsome in the 1st round is a good pick. Getting Jeremiah, I think, Owusu-Koramoah from Notre Dame.
That's the pick.
Kudos for that one. I'm not as sold on him as a lot of people, but he's a unique fit. He's a little small for a linebacker. He's big for a safety. He's very fast. So if you have an inventive defensive coordinator, you can figure out what to do with him. The guy I think they got as a steal is James Hudson, an offensive tackle out of Cincinnati. He went to Michigan originally, so I know he's tough if he can play for Luke Fickell. I wouldn't be surprised if James Hudson's a starting tackle for the Browns in a couple of years. As for the Bengals draft, I would have taken the big tackle in the 5th pick, Penei Sewell. Chris Spielman and the Lions picked him 2 spots later. Bengal-wise, they got a good pass rusher out of Texas, value pick Joseph Asai. And I didn't care for the trade back in the 2nd round. And while I think Jackson Carman would have been a good pick in the 3rd round, I don't think he was a good pick in the 2nd round.
You know, the guy that I thought the Bengals took and surprised me was the 5th round draft of that kicker from Florida.
Yeah.
And again,
they don't work out as draft picks. Very seldom do they work out as draft picks.
You're absolutely right. But they have had such miserable luck. The only team that I can think of that's had worse kickers is the Chicago Bears.
Yeah.
And so, hey, look, if that's a guy that you can plug in there like Jason Elam or somebody like that and play 15 years for you that you don't have to worry about the position, that's money well spent.
As for your Ohio State Buckeyes, speaking of the Bears, Justin Fields went to the Bears with the 11th pick, I think. Bears traded up 9 spots to get him. This is the confluence of 2 never-haves. The Bears haven't had a good quarterback since Sid Luckman, and Ohio State's never had a good quarterback in the NFL. So we'll see if Justin Fields can knock off both of those things.
You're discounting Tom Matte?
I am discounting Tom Matte, yes.
Nobody else knows except you and I who Tom
Good
Matte.
running back, but not a quarterback.
Yeah.
I'll say this about Justin Fields. He could not have landed in a better quarterback room to be groomed by 2 guys who will invest in him and who are just all-around great guys, more than Andy Dalton and Nick Foles. Both those guys have accomplished a lot in their NFL career, but they won't be egomaniacs who won't help Justin Fields develop. So that'll be a benefit to Justin Fields. But there's a lot of pressure. Now, when you go to the Bears and they were supposed to be drafting 20th, that's a benefit. You don't go to a crummy team. You know, he's going to a team that's a lot better than the team Trevor Lawrence is going to with Urban Meyer's Jacksonville Jaguars. So Justin Fields, he landed in a really good situation. Pete Werner, 2nd round, New Orleans Saints. He'll be a long-time NFL player. Wyatt Davis. Here's my takeaway from the Ohio State draft. Wyatt Davis, 3rd round pick. Shaun Wade, 5th round pick. If both of those guys had come out after they lost to Clemson in the Fiesta Bowl the year before last, neither one of them would have gone later than the 2nd round. So when the NFL is ready to draft you, go. I know that you could say, well, I like them coming back as Buckeyes. They've shortened their NFL career by a year, which means they've taken away their highest salaried year, which is their last year in the league. And Shaun Wade is a 5th round pick. He'd have been a 1st rounder the year before. So you come back to play in college, and it costs those 2 guys money. I've seen it happen a lot of times.
Who starts first for the respective teams, Justin Fields or Trevor Lawrence?
Oh, Trevor Lawrence will start the opener. There's no doubt in my mind. Yeah, no doubt in my mind. Might not be good for him, but he'll start the opener.
You even name his backup.
I cannot name his backup. He's Mr. Irrelevant. Not really. The last guy picked in the draft is Mr. Irrelevant, but the backup to Trevor Lawrence is Mr. Irrelevant because Trevor Lawrence is starting unless he is hurt or he gets a bad haircut, one or the other. What's left on the docket tonight, Mr. Fulks?
I got a very good question for you because this is your kind of this is what you really cut your teeth on.
Okay. Is this about Ibrahima Diallo entering the transfer portal?
This is not. This is about your boy Aaron Rodgers. Has he lost his mind? I mean, honestly, he's on a good football team. Seriously, he's on a good football team. And this is just about pride and ego, as far as I can tell, because that's look, their offense is going to put points up, especially if they have him, and they needed defensive help. I can see why they went out and got a cornerback, because people passed and ran on them, and their secondary looked like a pinball machine last year. So I want you to talk about Aaron Rodgers a little bit.
Well, Aaron Rodgers, I believe, decided to do to the Packers what they did to him a year ago. They shocked him by drafting Jordan Love as his future replacement. And so he decided this year on the eve of the draft, he would drop kick them in the you-know-whats by telling his friends in the NFL media world that he wanted to be traded. And that puts the Packers in a very bad situation, because all the trades that have been done, if you announce that 3 weeks ago, then they've got a chance to make a really good trade in advance of the draft, if in fact they're inclined to do that. I happen to know a couple guys who covered the Packers. They both tell me Jordan Love's not anywhere close to being ready to play, because last year was not a conventional year. You couldn't have a conventional minicamp. They can't have a conventional offseason program. So he didn't really get any kind of reps, even the minimal reps that a backup gets. This is going to be a stare down. Aaron Rodgers might go full Carson Palmer on him. He might refuse to report. I've not seen him on Jeopardy. Is he good on Jeopardy? Does he want to do Jeopardy? I don't know. I predict he'll end up as a Las Vegas Raider, because that just seems like a Las Vegas Raiderish thing to do. But, you know, the Packers have never drafted a wideout in the first round for Aaron Rodgers. But I do find it ironic that he got upset about them drafting Jordan Love when they drafted him when the Packers had Brett Favre. It's the same thing.
Do you like his chances better or Deshaun Watson's?
Ooh. I don't want to.
Every
I don't really venture a guess on that one.
I don't even know why he wants to wake up in the morning, because every day it's somebody piling on.
Yes. Here is Debbie says Aaron Rodgers was very good on Jeopardy. All right, we'll take your word for it, Debbie.
I don't watch that.
That's replacing Brett Favre is one tough act to follow. Replacing Alex Trebek is an even tougher act to follow. Before
we get off tonight, I want to highlight a couple of the questions on the Reader Speaks that we previewed a little bit last week. A lot of it has to deal with reader comments about the expansion of the playoffs. Roger Kraft just talked about it. I think he's probably overall pro expansion with a hedge. But we had a lot of people, and I want to thank those people who were kind enough to write. We must have had 50 comments, pro, con, ambivalent about it. But I want to share a couple of them because they're interesting. And here's one that interesting. It said, I'm trying to understand if the schools have no money and the OHSAA can't afford to pay schools for travel and staffing for playoff games. We just talked about this with Roger. How are more games a good thing for more schools? That came from James Vanderwall. You have a particular thought about that?
Well, I mean, theoretically, the more games you have, the more ticket revenues you're going to get, the more concession revenues you're going to get, the more parking revenue, if in fact you charge for parking. I mean, you increase your inventory, you do increase your take. Now, is it fair to do that to the kids? I would argue, is it fair to do that to your administrators? Mm-hmm. I don't like a 16-game season for a high school football player.
Exactly.
I think a 15-game season is really pushing it.
And, to that point here, somebody else down the list here said all the people want from the OHSAA is a good state tournament. Really? How does this help that? From Phil Hieronymus on Facebook. That's a very good question, Phil, and thanks for sending that in. I don't know how it makes a better state tournament, except for that age-old whine that people have now about trophy for everybody, participation, inclusion. But does it make for a better state tournament? And Bruce, we just talked about, how do you make the state tournament something that people are compelled to go to. And I honestly, I love Roger Kraft, but I disagree with him. I don't think people are so up in the bit for it that they're going to pay $12 for a 73-0 football game on Friday night for something to do.
Well, I think it might not be 73-0. I think my preference for this playoff expansion would have been to ease into it and see how there's a way to expand. I think everybody could have gotten what they wanted here. Rather than a 16-team region, I would prefer to see a 10 or 12-team region, and I would give my top 2 seeds buys. Then I think you have a better chance of your games being competitive because you're playing, 4 games with like 3 against 10 as opposed to 1 against 16. So you would get more inventory. There would be an advantage to being a top seed. You'd get a week off. And I think you'd be able to judge what's the competitive level between 3 and 10. If it's out of balance, then we don't want to go to 1 versus 16. This way you go all in at once and you're taking a big chance because if
you don't do any of that unless, like we talked about last week, you are, what's the word? Desperate for money. Your financial situation.
It's clearly a money grab, and I do think the OHSAA would have been better served to say, we're coming off a pandemic and we need to get back to a healthy financial situation, and we're going to do this for 1 year and reevaluate. I don't know, but I would have favored a 10-team in each region make it, or 12. If you want to go to 12, okay. But 16 is way too many to start out with. Way too many.
Let me share this with you. I know you're a rank and file family man, and you appreciate family values. It has been a long, long time since anybody has raised this particular issue, and I wanted to share this with you. More football means more attention and time spent on football and less time for family. Perhaps the OHSAA could do something to expand that too, from someone named, I think this is a lady, Terry Lepla. It's been a long time since anybody has raised that particular point about expansion of sports and how it cuts into family time and trips and travel and things like that. Very good point, Terry, and thank you for sending that in. And it's a great question as well.
Yeah, it's to me a decision that has been made a long time ago. Wednesday night used to be a sacred night. It's not a sacred night anymore. Sunday morning used to be a sacred time. Club sports have taken over Sunday mornings and they've taken over Saturday afternoons. So I don't disagree with the spirit of her comment. I just think that to focus on the expansion of the high school playoffs as that's the reason families don't have time. The leader in the family, the husband, the wife, the two together, you have to prioritize family time. You have to make it a priority or it will become just a chasing after all the different commitments on your calendar. But I think, those other instances that I cited, Wednesday night, Sunday morning, Saturday, all day long, those I think have eaten into the family much more than just adding or doubling the playoff field.
A lot of people don't know what you're talking about with Wednesday night, but I do, because that used to be the night for prayer meeting.
Yes, Wednesday night was church night. Yeah.
Wednesday night was church night for prayer meeting. I want to deal with this real quickly, too, because somebody wrote and said, you seem to be the only ones to question online or in print the expansion by the OHSAA. Why is that? And that is from Larry Ellerman. Well, Larry, and I wrote this as an ed note. Frankly, I don't know why more people didn't jump on this and render some kind of opinion about it, except for the fact that opinions in this day is a risky business, especially when amateur sports is the topic. And I think people have gotten so accustomed just to accepting what comes down the line. And you don't question. You just don't question anymore. By all means, you don't question because you don't want to make somebody mad. You don't want to get somebody, on your case. I've heard that over and over. We talked about some of the people last week. We talked to coaches and they said, hey, you can quote me, but don't quote me on the record. He said, the consequences are too big. And the only question that I have is, at what point do you say, hey, look, if you don't ask some of these questions, how do you make people responsible? How do you make people look at you and at least profess to tell you the truth about why they're doing something? Over the years, I don't think any daily entity has been more supportive of the OHSAA in terms of public expectation and excellence in maintaining it than what Press Pros magazine has been. But occasionally there comes a point, and you know me, you've known me for a long time. I've never changed. Occasionally there comes a point when you have to ask questions.
Yeah.
And I know there's a lot of people who are deathly afraid to speak up and ask questions, whether it's about politics, whether it's about sports, whether it's about church, whether it's about schools, whether it's about medicine, health, whatever. And I don't know how we got to that point. Why are we so deathly afraid of asking the obvious question?
Well, my provincial view of this is when you read a site like Press Pros, it is exactly what the name is. You're getting guys who have some experience at this, who've done this a while, and who were raised to do it maybe a different way than the current crop of journalists are. Most newspaper coverage of high school sports, which used to be a staple, is no longer a staple. Deadlines have moved. Staffing has been reduced and diminished to the point where I think we cover more in-depth high school sports in a way that newspapers used to. So we also bring with us a lot of experience and a kind of a detachment from the people in power. We're not afraid to question them. I don't think, any of us, Steve Blackledge, who's a tremendous asset to our site now that we've added Steve for Central Ohio coverage, yourself, myself, Greg Billing, Hal, on and on and on.
Horty?
Horty, we're and Mark Snyder. We're an old school bunch. And we did it in an era where the relationship with your sources or your teams that you were covering was a bit of an arm's length relationship. And so we've never lost sight of the fact of our role is to be a conduit to get the information that people want to know. So we believe strongly that the people who love football in the MAC, Shelby County League, the MVL, they want to know why. They don't just want to know what, they want to know why. And I think the best analysts on television will look at a play and will tell you why something happened, not just what happened. Your eyes can see what happened. Similarly with the expansion of the playoffs, okay, they went from 200 and something to 400 and something. But why? What are the issues behind it? What explains it? We try to give you context in everything that we do.
Yeah. Appreciate all those people that wrote in. And again, it's gratifying to know that many people, and Bruce, you and I talk about this for the last year since you came on board about how we're growing in other parts of the state that you don't even realize in southeastern Ohio, from northeastern Ohio, places like that pay attention. And I think for the very reason that you just illustrated, they want to know not only how, but what happened, how did it happen? Mm-hmm. And we're privileged to be in a position to do that.
We are. We appreciate it. And we appreciate our readers very much. It's all a symbiotic relationship, the readers' interest, the sponsors' support. And we've been blessed that we've had some people who bring a lot of talent to the site, photographically and narrative writing-wise. And so
let me tell you something, how well I know Roger Kraft.
Okay.
Roger Kraft is home right now practicing his signature.
Well, we'll see. We'll see if Roger's practicing his signature. I'm sure he's seen it a few times in his life. That'll do it, I think, for us. We appreciate everybody joining us. I don't know if we appeared live on the PressProsMagazine.com page,
Hopefully
but I do think
what? Hopefully we did.
Hopefully we did. If not, then hopefully the show will be up there later on. We want to thank everybody who watched us live. The kind comments we got, very much appreciated. Those who asked questions on Facebook. You can always watch the show on replay on the Facebook page, on our Twitter site, and I'm sure we will have it on the site later so you can watch it yourself. And if you'd like to be a Press Pros sponsor, reach out to us, Sonny at PressProsMagazine.com. And we just want to thank you guys for tuning in. And we'll be back again next week with another edition of the Press Pros Magazine Monday Night Huddle. Until then,
good night,
Truman. Time to go to bed, Truman. Aren't you going to introduce your new dog to us some night?
Some night, yes.
Some night, not tonight. Maybe next week.
We'll bring Boomer on.
Hey, by the way, next week we'll be joined by OHSAA Commissioner Doug Ute. He will be our special guest next week. So we look forward to seeing all of you then. Have a great night, everybody.